Welcome, friends. I'm Chris. I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness. And welcome to Sunrise Yin. What I think you'll need to enjoy, be safe, and make the most out of your practice today are, as you see Bella has back here, a yoga mat and one or two blankets. I prefer two. You could do this practice this morning with one and be just fine. Two yoga blocks will be pretty important today, as will a bolster. If you don't have a bolster, you could substitute something with a little bit of firmness and resistance, like a couch cushion. So pause your recording, gather up your materials, spread your mat out, and then Bella and I will meet you back here in just a moment for our Sunrise Yin practice. So find a comfortable seated position. Take some time, really settle into this shape. Flip your head over your shoulders, over your hips. And then if it feels safe and comfortable to close down your eyes, you can close down your eyes, but you don't have to. You could also leave them open with a soft gaze. And we're going to start with a reading from the Bhagavad Gita, and this is the tail end of chapter 9. So we hear entirely today from Krishna. Krishna says, the righteous who follow the scripture strictly, who drink the somas, are purified of the sins, who pray to be taken to heaven, they reach the world of the gods and enjoy an indescribable bliss. Although after eons of those vast and glorious pleasures, when their merit is spent, they fall back into the mortal world, impelled by desire, they achieve only what will pass away. But to those who meditate on me, undistracted, and worship me everywhere, always, I will bring a reward that can never be lost. Arjuna, all those who worship other gods with deep faith are really worshiping me, even if they don't know it. For I am the only object and the only enjoyer of worship, and they fall back because they cannot know me as I truly am. Worshipping the gods, men go to the gods. Worshipping spirits, to the spirits. Worshipping me, they come to me in the end. Any offering, a leaf, a flower, or fruit, a cup of water, I will accept it if given with a loving heart. Whatever you do, Arjuna, do it as an offering to me. Whatever you say or eat or pray or enjoy or suffer. In this way, you will be freed from all results of your actions, good or harmful, unfettered, untroubled. You will come to me. I am the same to all beings. I favor none and reject none. But those who worship me live within me, and I live in them. Even the heartless criminal, if he loves me with all his heart, will certainly grow into sainthood rather, as he moves toward me on his path. Quickly, that man becomes pure. His heart finds eternal peace. Arjuna, no one who truly loves me will ever be lost. All those who love and trust me, even the lowest of the low, prostitutes, beggars, slaves, will attain the ultimate goal. How much easier then for ordinary people, or for those with pure hearts in this sad, vanishing world, turn to me and find freedom. Concentrate your mind on me. Fill your heart with my presence. Love me, serve me, worship me, and you will attain me at last. And we will pick up next week with chapter 10, Divine Manifestations. And the first true yin shape of our practice today will be Anahatanasana, puppy dog pose. So maybe start on all fours. And I'd like it if you had either a block or your bolster close by. And I'm actually going to stick the block to place under my heart. And then walk your hands maybe 3 handprints forward, little angel, trying to figure out exactly what I'm doing. Turn your fingers to the outside. And then if you can, leave your hips floating over your knees. Lower your heart down. Release your forehead. So just lift the heart. That might be a block. That might be a bolster under your heart. But lift your heart. Shoulders are not pinching. Right. So in general, with this practice, we want a threshold of discomfort and pain. So somewhere right on that edge.
If a sharp pinching joint related pain, or again here that pinching in the shoulders, we want to have a little less sensation to be safe and sustainable. Any other?
In this shape, in this puppy dog shape, we sort of have tabletop legs, almost a downward facing dog upper body. So your experience in the pose may be different from mine, but what I think about what we're looking for here is opening on the front plane of the body from the groin all the way up to the throat. And then maybe gentle compression of the back body, especially the lower back. Certainly the shoulders find some openness here. And our goal in this practice, once you found that target level of sensation, that threshold between discomfort and pain, in the target area of the body, then we try to approach stillness and just allow time and gravity to do their job of drawing our connective tissues ever closer down toward the earth. If you've opened up some space in your body, you could, if you choose, add a little sensation. That might,
If you've got a block or a bolster under your heart,
It might even look like placing blocks under your hands to give your heart another 3 or 4 inches of lift and space to descend downward.
start the transition out of this shape. Now we're going into Sphinx pose, and one of the most gentle ways to transition out of this that I found is to rock the crown of your head forward. So your hips come down to the earth. Put your shoulders over your elbows. Maybe place a block in between your wrists. And then lengthen the legs out long, relax them. Everything from your lower back down to the tips of your toes relaxes and releases. If you're compelled to draw yourself forward, pulling the heels of your hands forward, put your palms up toward the stars, and then maybe even release your forehead down to a block. I planned this sequence today around the idea of facilitating releasing difficult emotions. In particular, what I'm interested in today is shame. So this is it's a universal human emotion that no one ever talks about. So when we're faced with our own shame, we often feel very alone, like we're the only person that feels it. And so I want to talk a little bit about what shame is, how to recognize it when it comes up, and maybe some principles that we can start to try to apply, even if in very small ways, start to let the shame go. But I think like idea number one is that none of us are alone in our shame. It's a universal human emotion. Soften your belly, soften, soften, soften. So Dr. Brene Brown, PhD social worker from University of Houston, she described shame in the way that landed best for me, better than any other person. She really specializes in, she's a shame researcher, basically. Her work has been really powerful in my life, and she's helped lots and lots of different people. She's an author. She's written a bunch of different books. She's a podcaster. She's got her own show. She's been a guest on many other shows. Amazing work. But she says the difference between guilt and shame, sometimes we can't tell the difference, right? But guilt is about, I did something bad. It's a feeling about I did something bad. And like it's a healthy emotion if it's balanced, right? Guilt can become unhealthy. But guilt is what helps us to grow. When we did something that's in contrast with our values, guilt is one of the emotions that helps motivate us to make that change and to get our behavior more in alignment with what our real values are. So according to Dr. Brown, if guilt is I did something bad, shame is the sense that I am bad, right? It's not a subtle distinction, right? It's subtle as a hammer. Sometimes we pick this up from our family of origin, right? And it's not anybody's fault, but our parents can't offer us anything that they don't have. And often what we get as parenting is a replication of what they got from their parents. Like it's all they know, or it's the exact opposite. Our parents end up being scarred by part of their parents' behavior, and it ends up being wildly out of balance in the opposite direction because our parents will do anything that they can to not be what their parents were, to not be who their parents were. Right, so sometimes we pick it up in our family of origin, sometimes we pick it up in our environment. I also think some of us are wired for that. To maybe take on irrational shame more easily than others. Right, so this might be, this idea might be too hippy-dippy for a lot of people. That's okay. But like, I think some of this comes from ancestral trauma. And the good news is, if we heal ourselves, we can often heal part or all of our ancestral trauma as well, so that doesn't get passed on to future generations. In my mind, this is a sacred task. So on your Sphinx pose, remove your block, lower your heart down to the earth, see your left arm out to the side, place your right hand under your right shoulder. For now, maybe rest your left temple on the mat. And then walk the fingers of your left hand further out to the left. Start pressing into your right arm. Lift your right shoulder, float it over your left. Maybe even put a bend in your right leg. Step your right foot behind your left knee. So we're not gonna spend a whole bunch of time here, so if you want even more sensation, a couple of thoughts that I have. One is come up on his spider fingers with the right hand. You could even place a block under your right hand, but anything that moves the back of your right shoulder closer over to your left and floats your right shoulder more closer to directly over your left is gonna add some sensation. Right, so I mentioned, I feel really strongly that there is a place for guilt as a healthy natural emotion that's really important, it can help us grow into our potential as human beings. I don't see that same place for shame. Right, shame isn't a constructive emotion. Like with guilt, we can say, I, I did this and I don't feel good about the way that this all rolled out. And if I had a chance to do this over again, when this comes up again, I will address it differently. Shame doesn't offer us the same opportunity. That being said, when we notice shame coming up for ourselves, I do think this calls, like every other emotion, to be honored by ourselves. And so we recognize it with curiosity and kindness, rather than say shaming ourselves over our shame. Roll back onto your belly. Ooh. Keep your right arm out to the side. Walk the fingers of your right hand further to the right. Rest your right temple on the earth for now. Left hand under your left shoulder. And then start pressing into your left hand. Lift your left shoulder, float it over your right. Maybe even put a bend in that left knee. Step your left foot behind your right knee. And the same cupcake or spider fingers are an option on that left hand, as is the block on the left hand. So the shame, when it comes up, it's not constructive. Like I can't think of an application where shame is helpful, and it's valid. It's a real emotion. It's what we're feeling in the moment. Right. Sometimes we feel the shame, especially once we started working, doing some consciousness related work. We notice the shame. We know it's not a constructive relationship. It's not a constructive emotion, and then we shame ourselves over the shame. Right. In Buddhism, this teaching is called the teaching of the second arrow. And I think this is frequently attributed to the Buddha, to Siddhartha. I don't have any idea if it's actually Siddhartha's teaching or it came from somebody else further down in the lineage. But the way that I understand this teaching, the first arrow, these are the insults, traumas, and pains that life just throws at us. We don't have a lot of control over that. Right. So we kind of have to accept this and live with it. But the arrow is entirely part of our choice. Right. So the second arrow is when we take the first arrow, this pain, this trauma, this insult that we've been struck with, we pull it out and then we repeatedly jab ourselves with that same arrow. So shaming ourselves over the fact that we felt shame would be an example of the second arrow. Or having something come up that triggers us into an anger response. Anger is another, like we're uncomfortable with it a lot of the time, but it's natural human emotion. It has a valid place. Right? It also has times where it's not centered and balanced, and we express it in a way that's really poor. Right? But it's a natural, healthy emotion. But if I get angry and then I use that to strike out and kick the bathroom or kick the tire of my car or whatever it is close by for me to displace my anger. And now I've injured my foot, right? That's the second arrow. That was preventable. It was never necessary. Stick the rule back onto your belly. Ooh. Bring your hands under your shoulders. Press yourself up onto your knees. And then walk your hands back toward your knees. I'm going to demonstrate this from the side first. Tuck your toes under your feet. So we're going to do a toe squat. So to start, this might look like hands on blocks. That's fine. That's a toe squat. If you've got more space and more openness, maybe reach back to, I should have said this before, tuck even your fourth toe and pinky toe back. Maybe this looks like hands on thighs. Or maybe you stack the joints, put your head over your shoulders, over your hips. Now I'm going to change my setup just to demonstrate. And even from here, we have a lot of control over the sensation. So for less sensation, lift your hips up toward the stars. For more, drop your hips down toward the earth. And only if you've got stacked joints, float your hands in front of your thighs. And we're going to do a Qigong called 8 directions that I learned from my Yin teacher, Annie. Float your arms up to shoulder height. Open them out to shoulder width. Throw your hands back into center. And now visualize pulling the moon in toward your heart. Press it out into the world. And then help the moon to set on the floor of the ocean. Up to shoulder height. Open out to shoulder width. Draw the moon into center. Pull in towards your heart. Press it out into the world. Help it to set in the ocean. Feel free to adjust your feet anytime that you need to. We're going to do one more of these. You can do it at your own pace, or you can keep time with me. And after that third 8 direction Qigong, we're just going to do a single round of clearing. Circle your hands up to shoulder height. And then imagine you're pressing a ball down into the water. Ooh, then come forward. Press the tops of your feet down into the earth, maybe 10 feet out. You can walk your hands back towards your knees. We're going to set up for saddle. So I'm going to demonstrate this first at what I think is the lowest level of sensation. And then we can always add some. So take one block at the lowest height, closer to the top of your mat, maybe a third of the way down from the top of your mat. And then a second block at the highest height. What is that? 10 or 12 inches back behind that. Lay your bolster across the whole kit and caboodle. So Annie calls this the lazy boy recliner. So if you fold your left leg back behind you, lengthen that right leg long, and sit your lower back down onto the bolster, and you can lay back. Now we have half saddle. So you can stay right here. I'm going to take this as a full saddle, but with the support of the bolster behind me. So in that case, come onto your knees, feet back behind you, and then just lower your torso back down onto the bolster. If you have lots and lots of space and your body wants more sensation right away, you can remove the blocks. You can remove the bolster. You can come down on the forearms. You could even come all the way down onto your back and reach your arms up over your head. I'm at like a 7 on a scale from 0 to 10. I have everything I could possibly want for sensation right here. So one thing that I feel like I'm learning about emotions, particularly the ones that are difficult to sit with, is in order for us to really process them, we have to allow ourselves to feel them. And part of that is it has to look like embodying the emotion. What I mean by that is noticing where we feel this emotion in our body when it rises up. And this can be a useful way too for us to help distinguish the difference between, is this guilt that I'm feeling, which could be constructive, or is this shame? Right, but that can be really tough. Part of it, I think, can be informed by an understanding of the chakra system. So in the Vedic sciences, with the chakras, each of the chakras has a scar, or sometimes it's called a demon. Right, and in the lower three chakras, the chakras that root us into the earth, right, that are our connection with our physical world. The second chakra, sacral chakra, the demon with a scar is guilt. So if you think about that area being close down toward the groin, right, just up from the tailbone, maybe 2 or 3 inches. And then Manipura, the solar plexus chakra, so midriff of our body, just above the navel, 2 inches above the navel. The scar or the demon associated with Manipura is shame. Right, so if you're in half saddle, can shift over onto the other side, shift the other leg back behind you. If you're in a full saddle, if you've opened up any space at all, what I do have space for, I can reach my arms up over my head and grab opposite elbows, and that actually feels fine for me. But again, you could lower all the way down onto your back. You could just start to remove some props. So that understanding of the chakra system and the associated scars really helped me to understand the shame when I felt, as soon as I read about shame being the scar associated with solar plexus chakra, think about, like, I think this is a universal experience, but I know it's happened many times for me. When we do something that we know is contrary to our values, right, and we're called out for it, or caught in the act, or maybe we just have our eyes open in some other way. Often I have this sense of like a heavy, wet blanket, a sinking feeling that comes from my navel and sinks down toward my hips, my pelvis, and my groin. So I associate that as my embodied sensation of shame. It's useful. We have to notice that in order to process it. And I think we also have to allow ourselves to sit with it too. This also calls for true compassion. Dr. Kristen Neff of the University of Texas, she has the Center for Mindfulness and Self-Compassion, and does this beautiful healing, restorative work for people. And part of what she says about self-compassion is that there's 3 elements. One is having some kindness and grace for ourselves. One is recognizing common humanity, like this. I'm not the first person this has happened to. This is a universal human experience. I may feel alone right now, but other people have felt this way. So I'm part of a worldwide community of people experiencing this. And sometimes if we allow ourselves to feel that emotion and we honor it for what it is, we don't disown it or we don't try to push it away. Right, walking helps to process it too. I think movement helps with this too. In tandem with this, some kind of movement practice that release that emotion can be really healing. But I think so can fellowship. So being with like-vibed people, and maybe having a community where we can talk honestly through this. And this thing came up that triggered some shame for me. Are you in a position where you can hold some space for me and we can talk through that? But this, of course, has to be with someone who has earned the right to hear our story. So someone that we already know is a safe space for us. Lift yourself up out of the saddle, folks. Ooh. Move the props out of the way. Maybe from here coming into a tabletop shape and doing a little cat roll. And each inhale, dropping your belly down toward the earth, shifting your gaze forward, opening your heart. Exhale, press into your hands, round through your shoulders. And you can continue flowing through this at your own pace, your own breath. This is just a counter stretch. Come back to step. And then from this tabletop position, we're gonna shift into dragon. Step your right foot forward to the outside of your right hand. Maybe inside of your right hand, behind that right heel, scoot, scoot, scoot that right heel forward. Maybe tuck the toes under your left foot, walk that left knee further back behind you. You can have hands on blocks, hands on the mat. I'm gonna have hands on blocks at the highest height. What I really like to focus on here is opening up along the front plane of the body. So from the inside of my left knee up into the groin and even into stomach and spleen meridian along the front plane of the body. But if you wanted to fold forward on the inside of that right thigh, hands coming down to the mat, onto blocks, onto forearms, that's also definitely an option. So having some fellowship and like having a community where we can talk through what's actually happening in our lives is important. But it takes some discernment and it takes some time. I suspect we've all had the experience of thinking that we had someone in our life that was a safe space for them, and we tried to open up and trust them. And sharing a difficult emotion like shame with someone who's not safe for us is really a recipe for more shame. It's not a good position for us to be in and to put ourselves in. I think therapy is a great tool for someone who habitually experiences shame or has some kind of like a shame from an acute event that they just can't seem to clear and work through on their own. All right, that's a great application for therapy. I think journaling is another good tool for this. And constantly reminding ourselves that we're not the only person this happens to. One of these things that people don't talk about. Right, so it's like we have the difficulty, we have the struggle, and that's hard enough. But the darkest moments of my life weren't just when I had something difficult that I was carrying, but when I had something difficult that I was carrying, when I felt like I was carrying it all alone and there's no one else in the world who's gone through that. That's not a good feeling. All right, check in with your body, notice your current level of sensation. Maybe release your hips any amount closer down toward that right heel. Or you could, if you had the heart lifted, you could do one of two things. You could lift the chin higher up toward the stars, honoring your neck the whole time, or fold forward on the inside of the right thigh. These are all options. So I've told this story a lot, but it applies so many times. In the mythology of Buddhism, Siddhartha, the historical Buddha, sat under the Bodhi tree for 40 days meditating, seeking awakening, seeking enlightenment. He was under a constant assault by the forces of Mara. Right? Mara is the devil figure, and its job was to keep people from waking up. So he played all these tricks on Siddhartha. It was really hard. It was really hard. So he used lust, he used shame, he used doubt, he used grief, he used every play in his playbook against Siddhartha. But with practice, Siddhartha found he got better at recognizing Mara when he ran up, and that opened up the opportunity to start experimenting with ways of addressing Mara. And he found this one way that if he addressed Mara, Mara responded with this really predictable response. Mara would come up to Siddhartha intent on tricking him, and Siddhartha recognized him, and then he would greet him in this way: "I see you, Mara, come sit with me." And when greeted in that way, Mara would turn around and run away, right? So rather than chasing Mara off, rather than yelling at Mara or denying Mara, "You're not there, you're not real," Siddhartha recognized him, identified him, and invited him to sit with him. So often we have when we see our own darkness, right? We disown it, or we push it away, and we deny it. Right? It's like everything is shut into this next room, left in the dark, and that door is locked and chained. But our innocence is in that room too. And if we don't allow ourselves to feel our difficulties as they arise, we can't really fully feel the beautiful things that come up in our lives either. So what is it like to see our shame and to sit and have tea with it? Or to start to unlock that door, open it up and invite all those difficult things that we try so hard to deny, to push away, to not deal with, to come into the light and sit at the table with us. As if to say, there's room for all of us here. Start pressing into your right heel, straighten your right leg. Ooh. Come back into your tabletop. Maybe if it would serve you, take some time in a counter stretch. I'm going to do some little hip circles in my left hip here. But any other counter stretch that makes sense for you, feel free to do that too. And then when you're ready, step your left foot forward. Same options. You could scoot that left foot forward. You tuck your toes under your right foot, walk your right knee back behind you. Hands on the mat, hands on blocks. You could come down on the forearms. But once again, I'm going to focus on releasing my hips down toward that left heel. Any of those choices are right. It depends on what's right for you and what you want to get out of this practice. So one way to start to recognize, do we habitually hold on to shame or even guilt in an unhealthy way, is paying attention to language. So you can probably think of people in your life, in your present or your past, and maybe sometimes in yourself where either we joke about ourselves in depreciative ways, like we say things that on the surface are funny, but they're really not funny, right? We don't really, deep down inside, we don't intend them as funny. Or language, like I had a colleague, I have a little of this myself. I have some scarring in the sacral chakra as well. So I can hold on to guilt in unhealthy and irrational way too. But I remember, like, anytime we talked about an interaction with a person, this colleague would start the sentence with the words, "I just feel badly that," and then she'd follow it. Right. So saying that once in a while, that's not wrong, because we do feel badly about things sometimes. When that's a default or habitual way that we start a language, we start a sentence. If it comes up over and over and over again, that may be an indication that we have some work to do there. And that language, it can be pernicious and it can be really sneaky. Sometimes we don't know when we're doing it. Often. I had an experience this week where I recognized that I did this on a social media post that I thought was hilarious when I posted it. And there's still parts of it that are pretty funny, but I'm also looking at it in a new way this morning. So I had on my Instagram account, I've recently posted a couple pictures of my girlfriend and I on her birthday. And there's someone I don't know who this person is, but there was someone that made a comment on it on two different pictures. One, they said, "So lovely to see a father and a daughter so close." And the other said something like that. "You have a very pretty daughter," something like that. So I chose not to respond to these things, but I took a screenshot and, like, I don't want to call anybody out. So I used a marker in it. I visually covered up over any identifying information. I posted it on Facebook and said something like, "Shots fired, lady." And I may need to change the theme of my free public talk on Saturday to something other than winning at aging. which is kind of funny. But at the same time, like that joke about not aging gracefully, is that really a joke to me? I don't know, most of the time I feel like I'm aging pretty well. But I will tell you, if I'm honest, that comment that may have been a dig or it may have been really well intended and sincere. It struck a nerve for me that didn't feel good. Right, which is okay, that's first arrow stuff, that's first arrow stuff. But then if I take a jab at myself about not aging well or looking older than I am, which objectively I don't think is true. That's second arrow. Pressing into your left heel, unthread your thighs, unwind that left leg, come back to tabletop. Maybe counter stretch, maybe some small circles of that right hip. And then after you've had sufficient time in a counter stretch, side set of your legs off to the side, come onto your back. See your arms out to the side. Walk your hips over to the left. Or rather, walk your hips over to the right. And then drop your knees off to the left. If you would, for this pose, for this practice, leave your gaze right up toward the stars. Then I'll give you in a couple of minutes some options for adding sensations if you're moved and inclined to do so. If you like more sensation in the shape, a couple of options. One is you could straighten your right leg, let gravity draw the big toe edge blade of your right foot down to the earth. Or you could reach your right hand back, catch the top of your left foot, reground your whole left leg and your right shoulder, and find cat pulling its tail. And these are not mutually exclusive. Not my body, but for some people, they can quite easily do both of these. cats, release your tails. If you straighten your right leg, put a bend back in your right leg, lift your knees up to center. And walk your hips over to the left. Drop your knees over to the right. So again, if you'd like to add sensation, you can straighten your left leg or take a cat pulling its tail, your right foot in your left hand. bend back in your left leg, release your tail, lift your knees back up the center. Then find reclined butterfly pose. Bring the soles of your feet together. Let gravity draw your knees down toward the earth. I invite you and really encourage you to consider placing blocks under your knees or your thighs here. You can do anything you like with your hands. Your hands can be on your torso. You can have your arms out to the side or up over your head. Now I'm going to take this with a Kriya meditation. So you can join this with me if it feels safe and comfortable for you, or if it doesn't, just set it aside, don't worry about it. But if you'd like to try this on, you can repeat these words after me, either out loud or silently. I am not this body. I am not even this mind. I am not this body. I am not even this mind. I am not this body. I am not even this mind. I am not this body. I'm not even this mind. And if this Kriya meditation, this mantra feels good to you, you can continue that at your own pace and on your own. From here, start to shift into any final resting shape, which could be the reclined butterfly. You could stay right here. But if there's something else that would feel really grounding and supportive of you and what you need for today, feel free to shift into that. know that you have the option, before we do make any changes, you have the option of changing nothing and staying here for as long as you would like. If you like, you could even shut off the audio on your device and just continue to rest here. And you also have the option to start to draw some deeper breaths. Maybe feeling for that prana, that life force energy in the air you're taking in, bringing your body back to life. And if movement is your path this morning, you could begin to reanimate your body with any small movements. But maybe start small, maybe start with the digits. Wiggle your fingers to your toes. Maybe add some small movements with the neck as well. Maybe drawing your chin from shoulder to shoulder. And if larger movements would feel good, you could start to add those, go bigger at any time, rotating your hands at the wrists, your feet at the ankles. You place the soles of your feet on the earth with a bend in your knees and windshield wiper your legs from side to side. You can take a full body stretch, anything that your body's calling for. And then roll over onto either side, find the fetal position. Take 3 or 4 breaths here to just check in and notice how you're feeling. So maybe notice in particular, what's the quality of your nervous system here post-practice? And press yourself up into a seated position, any seated position. Anything with soft eyes, so open with a soft gaze or gently closed, anything you like with your hands. Thank you, friend. It's always an honor to move and to breathe with you. And I can't tell you how much it means to me that you continue to trust me with your body, your mind, and your spirit as I guide you through your practice. If it feels safe and comfortable to you, draw your thumbs to the space between your eyebrows, your Ajna chakra. Blessings to you and your family. And that concludes our practice for this morning. Thanks again, friends. This is Chris. I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness. And this was our Sunrise Yin release of Shame sequence. You're doing great. Keep it up.